A heartfelt welcome to today's episode of Humanities Dialogue, presented by DEIPeople.com. We're so excited to have you join us for this dialogue. Hosted by Quincy and DEI leader, activist, and disruptor, and Daniella Fairbairn, author of Insanely Great Customer Service, and the podcast host of Be Insanely Great. Let's have a real humanities dialogue together. Now, beloveds, let's dive into today's episode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our visual podcast, Humanity Dialogues, brought to you by DEIPeople.com. Hashtag DEIPeople on Instagram at officialdeipeople.com. I'm your host, Quincy and husband, entrepreneur, friend, and everything DEI. And we have our wonderful host, S.
Hi, I'm Daniella Fairbairn. I am a wife. I am an advocate. I'm a leader. I'm an author of Be Insanely Great Customer Service, and I'm creating a world filled with competent, culturally competent leaders who are able to lead with compassion, love, and authenticity.
Yay!
Yes.
Everything, Daniella. How are you?
I am insanely great. And how are you?
Hey, it's the beginning of the year.
Yes.
Okay, so we've already had a wonderful new year.
Of course.
And now we're going to be talking about everything DEI and just the humanity in it.
Yes.
And so today's topic is all about DEI and how it's being taken out of organizations, very large organizations. And so we're going from progress to setback, just a challenge of DEI in our organizations. Are you ready? I know this is a big one.
I am ready.
Yeah. And this
Ready
has
as
been
I can be.
This has been on my heart for a long time as I see these large organizations kind of just downsize and publicize that they're downsizing. I'm like, maybe I shouldn't buy that product, but it is what it is. So let me set the stage for our audience when it comes to just diversity, inclusion, and equity, and the work within organizations. I think coming out of George Floyd, we had a testing of the pulse of our communities, our organizations, and why would something like this happen, right? We live in a world where this was actually possible, right? And so with that, we took stock.
Yes.
Right? We took stock of ourselves and we were like, hey, I have an organization. I'm predominantly serving a specific community, but my entire C-suite is white. Why is that? Or I am treating certain clients a certain way, or I'm treating a certain group of employees a certain way. And as a microcosm of an organization within the bigger picture, I can make changes within my organization that can really showcase and help anybody that is working within my organization thrive. And so that's where the conversation was. All wonderful. Now, I don't know where it got segued into us not doing that reflection, not being intentional in the work that we're doing. So this is all about white supremacy being put on blast, and most of the white people are saying we are not. And so we don't want to participate in this conversation of diversity and equity. If we weren't in a country where the equality of everything that we do was not being put to the test, we wouldn't be having the conversation. And so, of course, I got all spicy.
Yes.
I'm like, it is okay to take the emphasis in your organization off of DEI, but what are you doing for your organization and your customers, right? Are you intentionally making sure there's succession planning? Are you intentional in making sure the C-suite reflects the community that you serve? What about your advertising? What about your corporate image? What about the way you treat the people in your organization? And so that's really where this conversation is going to lie. And I know it is a difficult conversation for a lot of people, but I will say if we don't have the conversation, we are just we're just playing. We're just playing. What are your thoughts, Daniela?
I think you hit it right on the nail. It makes people uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Quincy, if I'm doing something one way, I've been doing it all my life that particular way, and someone comes in and tells me, no, 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 no.
Yeah.
Think about what you're doing. I want you to dig deep, and I want you to try something different. It's very, very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like therapy, right? So you're going to therapy, you know it's something that has to be done. You do it, but it's uncomfortable. I think in having a DEI department or division within your company is being intentional and saying you are being held accountable for your actions.
Yes.
And so people may not want to be held accountable. And then they realize that, okay, in actuality, we've been doing things one way. It's been making people uncomfortable. And so I now feel guilty. But really and truly, I didn't realize that my privilege made people uncomfortable. And so I no longer want to talk about it, right? But diversity, equity, inclusion is so much more than just black and white. And I think that is also the reason why it is no longer at the forefront for most companies, because it came down to black and white.
Yeah.
And
It is
it's
not
just that.
It is not just race.
It's not just that,
It
right.
is not just race.
Right.
Diversity and equity goes so far within the fabric of everything we do, whether it be health equity, whether it be opportunities for employment, for housing, getting a loan,
Yes.
Of course, I was one of the chosen few that had an appraisal done for my house, and it came in almost $50,000 lower. Of course, I kicked up a stink, right? Because I said to the guy, I'm like, the house next to me sold for X amount in May. This is June. Like, you have to take that into. He said to me, well, you don't expect your property to just rise. I said, oh, so this is a race thing immediately, because I am the black person in the white community, which is fine.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
But an appraisal is an appraisal. It's supposed to be subjective to the appraiser within the market.
Right.
And so, of course, I got all upset, and I reported him and did all kinds of other things. I apologize, mister. But the next appraiser that came did the same thing, but gave me the value that reflected the market, which was $50,000, almost 25% more than what he had intentionally and initially given. So.
In you sharing that story, Quincy, it makes me think about those of us who may not feel as comfortable advocating for ourselves and may think that's okay. And that's why DEI is so important, because you're then to know that things, although you may feel a certain way, it's okay to say it.
Yeah.
And it's okay to follow through and ask for different, right?
I think because I am an immigrant, a lot of the foundational thoughts and concepts about myself
Yes.
Lacks an element of fear and has a nuance of almost like I'm naive, because I don't see the harm that could come my way. But I've always been brave in the sense of speaking up and being an advocate, and that's why I'm even doing DI work, right? It is and has always been for me, we all need to treat each other fairly, right? I may not be as smart as you, but if I can do the job and you can do the job, then we do it together and we progress. But don't say to me no because of my skin or because of my caste. Because where I come from, I'm from Guyana. We don't particularly have a lot of issues in the sector of race, but it is more. Race when it comes to black and white. It's more, East Indians versus what we would say is African Americans, and so. They're both in American context black.
Yes,
so
yes.
We're fighting among each other.
Yeah.
People just tend to do that, I find, just in kind of making themselves kind of special.
The beauty of America is that DEI is part of the fabric. And as far as I'm concerned, if we're not an indigenous person, we're all immigrants.
Listen.
Really and truly, right?
Speak the truth. Say
Yes,
that
is-
again.
yes.
We
all
all
are
came.
immigrants. Yes.
We all came
Right.
on a boat, on a plane, on a something. We all came to the United States.
Yes.
Yep.
So I was listening
100%.
to Stacey Abrams recently, and I heard her. And Stacey Abrams is she's a force to be reckoned with, and
God, I love
she embodies DEI, right? And so she said that, not verbatim, but diversity. We need diversity in order for America to have inclusion and opportunities for the American dream.
Yeah.
Everything is tied together. So it's more than black and white. It's for those who may be considered special needs. It may be those of us who may have invisible, right, abilities or lack
Yeah.
thereof. And so with so much more than that, it's such a bigger picture
Yeah.
than that. So my family also immigrated, as we just mentioned. Everyone is an immigrant, right? Looking
But
at
everyone, Daniella was born here.
Yes,
So don't
yes.
come for her. Okay.
Yes, born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. And my parents came to America for opportunity.
Yeah.
And I believe that is the reason why most people do come to the United States for opportunity.
Yes.
And we have to remember that this is what the US of A stands for. And in order for us to continue to create opportunities, it's important that we be able to keep our doors open and we be able to be welcoming to
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
You know, and just treat everyone fairly. But if that were the case through and through, every single day, there'll be no need for DEI, really and truly, right?
And that's also
Yes.
what I want everyone in the United States to understand. The Department of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion is just the starting point to have the conversation, to really speak to the injustices that we have structurally within our organizations, within our society. And then once that is dismantled, right, yes, there will be no need because you would have addressed the wounds.
Right.
The wounds have been stitched up and a lot of medicines given, and it's healed, and we're moving on. I think when the act, the laws for just equal opportunities were set for housing, for example, it wasn't done because we just want to do a lot. There were some inequities in the housing. And so when you go, which we're still seeing now,
Yes.
and so there should be a point when it should, in essence, be over. But I think there's this collective strength to continue these behaviors in which communities are closed off, communities want to keep their resources. You know, coming out of COVID, we had a reckoning with a virus, a tiny little thing,
Yes.
right? But it showed us the inequities in our health systems, right? When you have right here in New Jersey, right, hospitals saying to the person bringing the patient, this person is uninsured. They shouldn't be coming to this hospital. They should be going to X hospital. That's a problem.
It
A
is.
hospital is a place where sick people go, insured or not insured,
For healing.
underinsured, to get help.
Yes.
So when a community is intentionally trying to say, hey, we are not going to, that's why the department even exists,
Right.
right? It's coming at the end as a mechanism to help the healing process. And it's going to be a difficult road. And I know for the organizations out there that have chosen to change their policy or decrease their footprint on diversity and equity, the train has left. The train is
Yes.
down the tracks. You
Right.
just happen to be one of the organizations that is not on the train, but people are not accepting certain behaviors,
Right.
especially from an organization anymore. And just as how you decided, hey, I'm going to make a tangible effort to say I am not participating, then I do not have to buy your product.
Right.
I do not have to go to an event that you've sponsored. I don't have to do that anymore. And there's nothing there's enough competition within the United States to not have that. So again, make your decisions for your organizations as little worlds within the larger picture, but be understanding. Customers have choice.
We'll be right back after this short break. Stay tuned. There's so much more to come here on Humanities Dialogue. Beloveds, welcome back to Humanities Dialogue. Now back to the show.
We may be different externally, but we're human. That is the common thread within us all. And if you were to think about it just at the basic level, how would you like your daughter, your mom, your dad, your uncle to be treated differently just because they may not look like the person who's providing them with a service, essentially, right? Yeah. And so in thinking about that discomfort, it should also make you think, you know what? Let me take a step back. Let me see how I can do things differently because I want others to treat me the same, do unto others.
Yeah.
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 I think with the DEI movement, we're gone a little beyond the personal. And I know it was a little disheartening to see, our last elections results, right? Because it was won against really looking at a society as a whole and what the benefits we can do. And then in contrast to really what I can do for my household. And so, the whole concept of, I really did it for the economics, it's really for the economics of your household, right? Because you don't care about your neighbor and how well they are doing,
unfortunately.
Right?
Yeah.
You're really caring about the food that you're putting on your table, right? And everybody, that's the beauty of democracy. Everybody has the right to have a vote, right? And so as a collective, we all are going to now participate in the next 4 years, right? With that being said, we must be responsible for the decisions that we've made. So since we have chosen our personal household's income and well-being in the financial element, not in overall, because it's nothing with healthcare, it's nothing to do with anything else, but the amount of dollars that I have within my household, compared to the greater good of the community, rights, women's rights, reproductive rights, the environment, and all of the other, things that we know within our community that needs to be addressed, we kind of kick that down the road. I think we must be responsible now to understand that in the next 4 years and beyond, decisions that will be made will be affecting our children. And it's not necessarily our children alone, but our children will get married. Our children will travel. Our children will leave the state and go to other states or go to other countries. And it is, what are we doing for the greater good? They have to bear the responsibility now, because nobody cares, right, that somebody made a decision 20 years ago. It's what's going on now in the world, right? What's going on with America within the geopolitical hemisphere? What is going on with America in pertains to trade, to whatever we're doing? We have to be responsible and say, hey, that's what's going to happen. And I'm okay with it because I'm making the choice now. Don't be coming saying, oh, well, now.
Right.
No, you made that choice. We're all in it, right?
Right.
Democrats and Republicans, we all live in the country. And so now we have to live with the consequences of the collective.
Every action has a reaction.
And what are we going to do?
What are we going to do?
What are we going to do?
So you're talking of legacy and what that would mean in the future. I'm thinking of an interview I saw recently with 2 Hispanic families and following the recent presidential results and what that meant and how they would be impacted. They were looking at a family that has American citizens and also those who were undocumented versus a family where the father was undocumented, but his children were Americans as they were born here.
Yes.
And it was very emotional for the family that had both undocumented members and also those who were citizens because they knew that this is going to be a huge impact. And that family primarily voted one way versus the family that has a father who's undocumented. And he intentionally made a vote that many would think didn't make sense because in his eyes, it's about economics. And he felt as if he wanted things to go in a different direction versus the last 4 years. And he was willing to sacrifice himself to say, if I need to return back to my country, I will, because my children will now have a different opportunity because they're here in this country.
Yeah.
But even if I was at a loss for words,
Yes.
Quincy, really, because but that would mean that you won't be here with your children, right?
Yeah, with your family.
And so what would that do? How would that affect them? You know, you're looking at it from one angle, but not the other.
Yeah.
And so would that also mean that they would have to return with you? Because what we've been hearing, some things may be coming down the pike, right?
Yeah.
That can affect them in that way. And so it's been a very emotional time for most people. And I just really do hope for the best. But just in terms of what that would mean and legacy, in that this would affect the legacies of families for years to come.
Yeah.
Decisions were made. Decisions are to be made that may not be in the interests of the greater good, and not considering diversity, equity, and inclusion to be all of that. I think of something I heard a couple of years ago where diversity is inviting someone to the dance, but inclusion is inviting them to dance.
Yeah.
Right? And so what we're saying is that we are inviting people to the dance called America, but we are not asking them to dance. So they're here, but they're not getting, equity isn't there. It's missing.
Yeah.
So they're not always included, but they're present. So it's diversity in America, but missing the equity and the inclusion.
Yes.
You know?
And that's the conversation where an organization as a small version of America within a community has an absolute power in correcting some of the wrongs of our world.
Right.
Right?
Right.
I cannot say to anybody that their vote was wrong. Right? It is your choice. It is a personal, intimate decision. Now, as a collective, right, 72 million, right, made that decision, and we're going in this direction. When it comes to just understanding that we're all immigrants, right? We're all immigrants.
Right.
Of, you may not be an immigrant of the 2000s, but you were of the 1950s,
Right. At
of the
some point.
1920s, the 1930s,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And then this whole conversation about, just you are American, right? And so for me, as an organization, you have a responsibility to the group of people, whether it be 7,500 to 70,000 to 1 million people. I just heard Walmart had 1 million plus employees. I was like, wow.
Wow.
They have a responsibility to ensure that the people within their organization do not have to face the harms of the world which they live in. Not because it's going on outside of the walls. You have a responsibility to the people that came to work for you, to serve the customers, to sell, to service, to provide any sort of work for who you decided. And so I think any organization that is intentionally deciding, I am not going to participate in that, has some explaining to do why. Why are you not doing it? And that's to me where the truth comes. Because if you're going to say, hey, it will drop our share prices and we have to lay off all of these people, then you're honest. right? So we know, okay, I work for an organization that doesn't particularly care for us on that intimate level once we produce, right? Once we sell these cars, once we produce these cars,
Right.
right? So then you now are intentionally participating. Do I want to work for somebody like that?
Right.
Right?
Right.
Or do I
right.
not want to?
Yeah.
Right? And so for any organization that is intentionally deciding not to or to decrease, what is the counter narrative? What are you going to do for your customers? What are you going to do for your shareholders? What are you going to do for your team? Right? What are we doing?
Right.
And if you're not doing anything,
Right.
then you're just becoming what society is.
So you're loyal to yourself, right? So where is the loyalty? So if I'm working for a company who is not making me a priority, should I really make that company priority, right? So I have options. I can go someplace else.
Yeah.
But I love what I do, and it makes it uncomfortable. And why would you want to stay? You're working 8, 10, 12 hours a day. You're passionate about what you do. You show up to work, but you're looking for loyalty back. It's a two-way street.
Yeah.
It no longer is a one-way. It doesn't work that way.
Daniela, the new kids, listen,
won't-
you know we're from the old school.
Right,
Okay.
right.
And we have loyalty. Loyalty is built into
Right.
how we think about work.
Yes.
These young people,
No.
they're not playing.
No.
They're asking, and if you're not, now, for all of the leaders out there, right? All of the leaders out there that are making these decisions, those are going to be your middle managers in about 10 years. Those are going to be your CEOs. Those are going to be your customers if they're not already. So you have to be making sure, because the thing is, I dislike when something bad has to happen for an organization to change their behaviors. Like we don't need the
proactive.
trauma and suffering
Right.
to understand we're in a world where there is an intentional walk to white supremacy, right? And we have these structures. We know that they exist, and we're trying to dismantle them so as to be fair and equitable to everybody. But then you are in turn now saying, well, that's not important to us. What is important to you then? The humanity of it. You don't have to accept diversity. We are diverse. There are lots of plants, lots of insects.
Yes.
There are many types of, cats and dogs and everything. We look at each other. We are diverse. It is what
Yes.
it is. It is the systemic structures that try to take opportunity and that equity from another. Now, if we understand that, hey, this specific community is not getting these resources, as an organization, you have a responsibility to make sure those people that work for you are now getting it. So if you look within your organization and you realize my entire directors and above are 90% white, and everybody below, we have a 80% African American, then that's systemic. And you can make that change.
Right.
It has nothing to do with the world. It's about, these are the people that work for me. These are the people I'm supposed to care for.
Right.
And our leadership, unfortunately,
Does not reflect
has that responsibility. It is difficult. It's not nice to be accusatory and say, hey, we didn't have any succession planning.
We'll be right back after this short break. Stay tuned. There's so much more to come here on Humanities Dialogue. Don't forget to visit DEIPeople.com and follow us on Instagram at DEI People Official for more insights and updates. See you in a moment, beloveds. Beloveds, thank you for supporting the brands and initiatives that make Humanities Dialogue possible. Now back to the show.
But what it comes down to, Quincy, you're comfortable with what you're comfortable with. And so if someone looks like you like there is a sense of community that's there that may not be there otherwise. And so if I'm looking for my successor, and I'm also thinking my predecessor, I'm looking for someone who may look like me, who may have similar experiences as I have, in that they would think along the same ways.
Yeah.
You automatically assume that because someone may not look like you, that their experiences are different, and they may not entirely be true.
Yeah.
It's our own internal biases, you know?
The implicit bias that is coming from within is what DI does bring to the forefront.
Yeah.
All we're doing is taking the Band-Aid off the sore.
Yeah.
Yes, I will hire everybody from Harvard if I went to Harvard.
Yes.
Because I have something in me that says this person will be similar to me.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And I have seen organizations that have those sort of programs in which they pull from Ivy Leagues. Who is running the Ivy? It's more than likely somebody that went to an Ivy League school.
Yes.
That sees some sort of reward value in only picking students from these schools, right? You see it a lot in finance. Now, if you are seeing that as an organization, again, DI, the diversity department, is just going to coach and to say, hey, this specific system is not equitable. Not everybody can afford a $97,000 tuition with a selection rate of 99%, right? Not everybody can do that. Then there's the legacy admissions to these schools. So not everybody went to the school already.
Correct.
Now, we're looking at an entire community for leadership. Do we really want well-rounded leadership, or do we only think that somebody from an Ivy League school can be a CEO?
No.
Right?
Right.
It is ludicrous to even think, because many, many CEOs around the world have not gone to these Ivy League schools. This is an American structure. And we have, as an organization, an actual opportunity to fix it,
Yes.
to open it up so that you have a wide selection of talent to choose from, right? As somebody that's a critical thinker, I will go ahead, head to head with anybody from an Ivy League school on making a decision. Somebody's going to be right and somebody's going to be wrong.
Right.
Or we both going to be right. Some is just going to be more right than the others. One is going to be more long-term than the others, et cetera, et cetera. So again, in an organization, you need somebody to say these things because you're not seeing it in the organization because you are so focused. The person who is running that program is like this, and this brings us success,
Right.
right? It's cachet.
Right.
You know, we get to go to the Harvard bar in Manhattan. You know, have you gone?
I have not.
Nobody has invited
No.
me anybody of our listeners, please invite us, because you only can go if you are, like, you know, somebody who went to Harvard.
Right.
I don't know what's going on in there. I bet they're selling the same drinks like everybody else.
Yes, sir.
Right? But again, it is, if you know that's a part of your organization, you have a tangible responsibility to really ask yourself, is this successful for me? Or how can I dismantle this so that I can have long-term succession planning?
So how do we go about doing that, right, Quincy? So we understand that DEI is important. It is something that should be embedded in everything that we do. But if there are now setbacks when it comes to DEI, that's no longer the hot topic, it's no longer sexy, right? To talk about that. How can we move forward? Like, what can we do just for us to progress, you know? Regression is natural. I think all habits die hard. And so in order to keep pushing through and to progress, you would need to be held accountable, which is why DEI programs are essential. But if that's no longer the thing, what can I do? What can someone, everyday Joe, do, you know?
Yeah. I think when we're looking at organizations, especially from DI people and the organizations that we help, it's the intentional stance of what do you want to do right now. Looking at your organization, and every organization is going to be different, right? What are we wanting to take the steps to do? We all can't come out and become, the IBMs of the world, right? That have a really great DI program. some organizations have to start smaller, right? It has to start more than likely in the C-suite and get a buy-in on what are we going to do? Where are we? And how willing are we to step into this uncomfortable space, right? I have spoken to a specific organization in which you could see that the C-suite was not, they wanted to do a little tokenism, right? They
Okay.
wanted to do DEI because. And when it came to just talking about the advertising, right? What are you using as your models? What is on your website, right? What message are you sending out to the world? You know, I remember there was a photograph on their HR section of their website, right? And they put a picture of their, like, it looked like most of their employees. But it was quite clear that the African American and the other races were absent. It was predominantly female and white. And so the question from me to them was, fully knowing where you are, what are some of the steps that you are willing to take at this present point in time? And that was a difficult question because even in their marketing, they did not want to change that. And this is where the fantasy of what your corporate image is. They had one picture of their team, but every other picture was a model that they selected, right?
Yes.
And so you're asking yourself the question, if you have the opportunity to choose all of these models, why don't you choose a more diverse? You know, you have a landing page of a certain person.
Right.
Okay, the next image is what? You have a hand kind of showing some help to another hand. Why are both of the hands white? It's like you have these small things you can start to do to chip away because you fully understand, okay, we are looking at the world a certain way. Now, are all of your customers white? If that is so, then it would make no difference.
Right.
But you're not. You want to sell this product to everybody within the United States. And so when I had these difficult conversations, it was quite clear they weren't ready for all of that. And so for me, my advice to any organization that has a DEI program is to start there. Start with where you are and be honest. That's the trick. It's not accusatory. We're not trying to teach adults any new things. Just say, hey, I am white, or I am Hispanic, or my organization only hired Hispanic people, or at a certain level it is. And then start to do the intentional kind of changes, because every one of those decisions can be made. You are in charge of the organization. And so you have an opportunity to just make those changes, tweak them, and slowly start. You know, I think the time has come where the audience is just not, we don't have the patience for the small steps. And so a lot of C-suite members are being forced with making some big, bold decisions because we had the 80s.
Yeah.
And that was that time. We had the 90s. Yeah. And then you had, the 2000s. And then, come on.
Yeah.
2024, we in for that.
Yes.
Like, we don't want to do studies anymore. You don't want to do surveys and questionnaires. We know.
Yes.
We know
Yes.
the data is there. Let's make some policy changes.
Right.
But not all organizations can do that immediately.
So that's a really good recommendation and just what can be done from the top down. But if you're on the ground level, so say if you are an employee, you're not in management, being part of employee resource groups would be something, right? That's even if that exists. Some may not even have it. So it's forming communities. I think there's so much strength in community and belonging. So if you're able to start a group with friends and with common interests, and you're able to form a community within, within your team, it's helpful,
That's the thing about employee resource groups, you do need some funding sometimes, and you're also needing the buy-in from leadership because it's going to be resource-driven. It's also going to be tied to the corporate image of the organization.
Okay.
So for people on the ground floor that want to ask, step up and ask, be bold, be brave, and ask. And it doesn't have to be, a Black resource group. It can be your reading. I know of book clubs. I know of veterans. We have the ones that everybody knows about, which are the LGBTQ community, always has an ERG. The Black women in technology is always a good one. There are certain specific things, but you can form any group. I have seen the book clubs within the ERG framework. I have seen health and wellness. I've seen green, like, you're really focused on sustainable,
Yes.
which pushes the organization, hey, enough of those styrofoam cups,
Right.
Enough of buying those. Give everybody a mug.
Let's start recycling at the very least.
Yes, yes.
Even that too.
So it pushes the
Yes.
organization in that way and gets an opportunity for you to see that as adults we're within a space, but we all want to belong. We all want to belong.
Yes.
And so again, to the organizations that are not doing this, please, hit us up.
Yes.
We'll talk about it. But
Sounds good. I do think that you're right in speaking up. And say, for instance, you may not be comfortable, you can definitely just kind of lean on, one of your peers who wouldn't mind being outspoken and being an advocate for the team.
yeah,
And if that's not an option for you, it's creating something for yourself. You notice that there are other women who may be coming into the company who may not be as comfortable in the workplace. And so it's just forming these groups and just having conversation, just building community.
Yeah.
I can't stress it enough. I think that's what's missing a lot of times. There's so much going on day to day in what we need to do. Life happens, but we really have to just push as much as we possibly could to make the environment comfortable. If I know I came into a company where a lot of people didn't look like me, and I am looking for...
you feel othered.
Yeah, othered. How are you able to be inviting to bring more people on board?
Yeah.
How are you looking to build that relationship with those who may not look like you, may have different experiences from you, but there is a commonality, right?
Yeah.
We may both be mothers, we may both be the eldest, right, in your family. So there's something that you can start with.
We know that. I think on a cellular level, we know as humans that we are equal. We know innately that humans do not own humans. We know innately that everybody should have an equal opportunity at healthcare. Everybody should have an equal opportunity of doing what their talent is, whatever it will be. We know that. But when we have social structures within organizations trying to safeguard the old ways of being, that's when it becomes a problem. And I think at DEI people, if you find yourself within an organization as a leader, as a member of that organization, remember, ERGs, your C-suite does need to be bought in. They must be the most grounded in the change. But overall, we must understand that, we're here, we're human, we're the same, and we all want to thrive. And would you believe we're almost done?
Oh my goodness.
We can talk all day,
It's so much.
Daniella.
Listen, when you're having fun, time flies.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Humanity Dialogues. Again, I'm Quincy Daniella and my wonderful co-host Daniella Fairborn. We thank you for joining us, and hopefully we'll hear or see you on our next podcast.
See you soon.
See you soon. Bye.
Bye.
We have come to the end of today's episode of Humanities Dialogue, presented by DEIPeople.com. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode. Until next time, from your hosts, Quincy Daniella and Daniella Fairbairn. Now, continue the dialogue on at DEIPeople.com and at DEI People Official on Instagram. See you soon, beloveds.